Die was verstehen, ich will der Rekia besser, ich will der nachher da. Kann sein.
Ik denk één dat het gebied dat daar versteht. Dat zal er maar wat wat ik al gelernt heb hier. Je gaat het ook niet. Ik heb die tijd dat er niet wat.
You tell me when it's ready? Go?
Just launched, yeah.
Okay, good morning. I think it was in Tavshim Memhei, this Shabbos Parsha B'Chukesai, the Rebbe spoke a very interesting sikha, which is going to be the basis of my shir here on Parsha B'Chukesai, the Tochacha, the more controversial sections of the Torah. And we all know the Tochacha has all kinds of halachas. There's no aliyah. The person, when they read the Tochacha, they call up the Balkeda, not even calling up, he just makes the bracha and he reads it quieter than usual. This is 3 times a year in Parsha B'Chukesai, in Parsha Dvarim, and in Parsha Kisaveh. So of course the most obvious klotz kasha is, what is going on? Why would the Eibishter, who we say, Avad Achamim, Avad Achamon, Avas Merachem al Abonim, why would a father curse his children? And that's the general translation, the 49 klolos, or it's translated into English, curses in B'Chukesai, twice that, for 98 in the Kisaveh, and then the few in Parsha Dvarim. So we understand this, but even that, there's all kinds of halachas how that should be said, and it should always be said. How many times we have the emphasis, Teiras Chesed. Kol ha-Teira d'kula le'nitna l'lasa shalom be'elam. Shalom, Teiras Chesed, Rachel, Darkei Ne'am, Kol Nisivaseh Shalom. I mean, I can go on, psukim after psukim. The Teira is the Eibishter's Teira, Chesed. So how do you explain this? Both practically, and of course on a deeper level. It's a question I can assure you that you're going to face. People will ask this question. I've been asked this question many, many times by people who grew up in a Torah world and people who did not. They say, you start reading it, it sounds like this is the God you want to have a relationship with. And when you read some of these klolos, it's quite blood-curdling, if you wish. It's quite horrendous. So how do we even approach this? So some people avoid this altogether. They just said, we'll read the other parts in the Torah. Parsha K'deshim is very nice. V'haftarecha kamecha, Zakal Gadol b'Torah. There's a lot of psukim in Torah that are beautiful. But the fact of the matter is, you can't avoid this as part of Torah. Torah's emes and Torah's chesed. So being that B'Chukesai is often very close to Lag B'Omer, like this year, Lag B'Omer was Sunday, it's Parsha B'Chukesai. So there's a connection actually. The Alter Rebbe in L'Kutei Torah B'Chukesai talks about this, in about the klolos of the Tochacha, and he says that the klolos are really chsadim nistarim, chsadim muchusim, sometimes a lashon. Tzemach Tzedek in Haggadah there, L'Kutei Torah, says Ayin Moed Katan Daf Ches, the famous story in Moed Katan about Rashbi and his son Rabbi Elazar. And what's the story? Rashbi sent Rabbi Elazar L'Ma'ariv to the Talmidei Chacham in Ma'ariv in the west to go get a bracha from them. So he traveled there, and when he heard what they started saying to him, he was all shocked. They said to him things which sounded very much like the worst possible curses. Comes back all disturbed, tells his father, you sent me for blessings. Instead, they said things that were the exact opposite. His father asked him, Rashbi asked Rabbi Elazar, what did they say? And he told him. So he said, no, everything they said, it's kol hana brachas ninhu. Everything is brachas. And he interpreted each expression, you shall reap and not sow, that your children will live, you'll see your children live long. I mean, he gave a whole, for each section of what they said, he interpreted the teiv. Okay, very nice. But here's the big question. Everyone asks, all the Mefarshim. And here you could appreciate also Chassidus in context of Nigla. All the Mefarshim ask, that's very fine. So why did they have to say it cryptically? They could have just said, say the brachas. Someone comes for a bracha, tell them, give them a bracha. I mean, should we learn from this that when someone comes to you, you have to say it in words that are mamish the opposite and then interpret it? So generally, there's 4 explanations in this Gemara. Marsha, the Yankiv, the Iyun Yankiv, the Eitz Yosef. I mean, they different Mefarshim. The Mefarshim break it into 4 explanations. Explanation number 1 is they were to be mechaded to so-called challenge Rabbi Elazar. He should use his mind like Talmidim say a riddle, a chida, a riddle in order to sharpen the mind of the Talmud. So they expected that he would assume that they're Talmid Chacham, they're tzaddikim, they're going to say something positive. The fact they said it, this language was to be mechad his mind, to sharpen him, challenge him. Second explanation is they wanted to give Rashbi, the father, the schus to Megala the bracha. So they didn't say it in a Megala way. Rashbi would be the one that was Megala. The third explanation is because Bechal HaBracha is more chal, like we say, Sami Dover Sami Min Ha'ayin. To say a bracha begoli in front of a lot of people is, so you say it, say it very privately. So here they didn't want it to be created in Ayin Hara and so on. And the fourth explanation is they know that every time you give a bracha to someone, there's always the kateger. There's always the prosecuting angels that will find a problem with this person. They'll be makatrik. So they decided to put it in Asius that the makatrigim, the malachim that may be makatrig and challenge it, should not understand. And they say, because malachim don't read thoughts, they only understand dibur. So the machshava of the chachamim, they didn't know what they're thinking. The Asius they saw, so the Asius sounded appropriate curses, and again, so that way they would leave him alone. It's an interesting answer. Huh?
Isn't that kind of the same as the third?
No, the third one says that a bracha should not. Maybe it's connected, but it's the third one says that a bracha should be said in front of less than 3 people. So here it was more people, so they kept it that way. It could be connected, but okay. However, the Rebbe says, okay, but this still, it's nice explanations, but still something missing. I mean, they could have still said it in a way, in a neutral way. To mechaded him, they have to dafka say it in a klolis that are negative words. And even for the malachim that they could have also said in a way that if they're smart enough to find words that the malachim wouldn't, the mekatrigim wouldn't be bothered by. So here's where the emek of the Tzemach Tzedek is Hagah. Tzemach Tzedek didn't just come to add the Hagah at Tziyun to Meir Cotton based on what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He was coming to explain that the Alter Rebbe's beard is the ultimate beard to explain why it was said in this way. So it's not just a maramokim. So what's the explanation? Why something would be said in Asis that are mamish the hepech? So the concept of chsadim nistarim and chsadim chusim had to be explained. What does that mean exactly? So just use a few examples. Chassidus says that the deepest thing is kol ha'gvei gvei b'yesa nefel lamata mata yesa. Question is why? Why can't something gaveh fall not so low? So in other words, dafka in the lowest things you find the highest giluyim. One of the reasons for this is because the giluyim are so powerful that the kelim of higher elimus, kelim de kedusha, are not big enough to contain it. So you need to have something that doesn't have a tzir. Like it says about, we're going to read next week Pasha Bamidbar. So Alter Rebbe teaches Midbar, of course, is a negative. Lo yoshev adam sham. It's not a place of civilization, a midbar. And yet, the Alter Rebbe teaches Lo yoshev adam sham. It's l'mayla yishev adam. So it can go both ways. Say this a lot of time. Lovan lamata is mamash klipa, but lovan l'mayla is levena elyon. Pare, of course, we all know pare tanin hagadol sholosh klipas atmeis, and yet we say in Zehar is parim the kol neherim. So this, you'll see this in many inyanim. Just to give a very strong example, that Tzemach Tzedek and Derech Mitzvah, based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim, brings about the big shaila. How is it possible that before Matan Torah there was that the Ovis, Yaakov married two sisters? After Matan Torah, it's Mamish Arayis. And he says there that the Arayis, which is such a Isur, the Arayis of Mamish, one of the biggest Isurim, to the point of Yarag Yaver, that it's shayrish when you talk about Yichud, for example, Yichud Abavim or Yichud Zoh Malchus. Yichud Ach V'Aches in Atzilus is the highest Yichudim. That the highest Yichudim, when they come down the Mata, they can fall in a very dark place. So bottom line is this. To use a Pashto example maybe would be this. When you want to express yourself, so we know there's a few ways to express yourself. You say your words, you say your thoughts, and so on. You want to express a certain idea, you'll see that when it comes to, I don't want to say shtusim, but nonsense, we can talk and talk and talk. I mean, all you got to do is turn on a radio, or today on radio, turn on any talk show, and you see meret and meret vegengarnished for hours. People talk about the weather, about politics, about all kinds of superficial things forever. If someone asks you to talk about yourself, what's going on inside your feelings, you'll find very few people talk about themselves. And l'cheir, it should be easier to talk about your inner feelings than about nonsense. Or let's say not nonsense, material things. When it comes to talk about, it's not because we're ashamed, it's because the intensity of what's going on emotionally inside you is too strong for regular kalim. You don't always find the oasis for it. Someone will say to you, what is really bothering you? You'll see it's not that easy to always express. And even if you express it, it may also be just the surface. So Chassidus explains that when you want to express a deeper feeling, that's why oasis are not enough. Sometimes you need a nigun. A nigun can express deeper than a drasha. The famous story with Alter Rebbe and Shklov, that with all the drasha and all the chachma and all the geinus, and still, when he sang a nigun, was it Tamaru kitei vavai, like the Rebbe said, Purim Tov Shechai, Tamaru kitei vavai, versuchten zet, as the Rebbe is good. And with that, he drew hundreds and hundreds of people. What was in the tune? A nigun has something that words cannot have. We call it in English like language of metaphor. You can't always say it in straight words, so you say it in a moshel, you say it in levushim that are essentially expand the kelim, so more can be expressed through it. Then even that may not be enough. Sometimes an oivei, or a sigh, or a laugh, or a cry can be more powerful than an entire book. You see a person's really chmona l'tzlan and tsar, but also in simcha. Sometimes it's one expression. You say, how could one expression that comes from the tifnish of the heart be more powerful than an entire article you write? Because it's the kelim are smaller, and therefore the eiris are stronger. So in the language of Chassidus, it says b'chlal like this. In my Maimorim Chassidus, I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's interesting that the speaks about the fact that you look at the human body. Which part of the body is the smallest, but has most keiches in it? The head. The head is the smallest part of the body. There's a reish guf regel. The head is the smallest part, but look at the intensity, what's in the head. You have the brain, you have the eyes, you have the ears, you have the mouth, the face. Everything that really controls the body is in the head. As you go downward, as the body gets larger, you have less keiches. You have a lev and you have lungs and so on and so forth. The legs, which is like half the body, has the least amount of keiches hanefesh. They're all needed. So Chassidus asked the question, l'cheira, the place where there's the most giluyim should be the most kelim. And says, no, it doesn't work that way. The bigger the eir, the less keli there is. And the more keli there is, the less eir. So in order to capture bigger eir, you can't have a keli. Sometimes the expression is like, tukva de gufa is chulsha de nishmasa, the Zohar says. And tukva de nishmasa is chulsha de gufa. Does not mean, God forbid, that we compromise on the health of a person. That's not what we're talking about. But the point is, when do you need more kelim? Like you see, if you have talmidim who are beginners, you need to speak more, you need to explain more. Chachamim, or students that are talmid choded, or talmid that is muvak, is someone you don't need that many words, because they get the eir quicker. And that's why we go even deeper, that there are times that even an expression, even sound, is not enough. The Zohar asks the question, what's deeper? The Aved of the Kehanim, which is Bechashoi, Belachash. The Kehanim were quiet when they served in the Beis HaMikdash. Or the Levim that served with Shira, with Zimra. So most people would say Shira is Zimra, Mehet Nigunim, Zingtzach and everything. The Zohar says no, because the Gresta Giluim come in, like we say, killed Momadaka. When Eliyahu Novi was waiting to see where Hashem is in his Gala, so first came the Rash, and then came the Ruach, and then came the Eish. And it was not the Eibishter, was not there, but killed Momadaka. So the smaller the Keli, the quieter it is, the more power it can have. So the point, so the point is, the Zohar says, for example, we get to Tkiyah Shefer, that the three Kelis, so you always think that Tkiyah seems to be the one that stretches longest, but the Shvarim, the Truah, the ones that are break down are actually more powerful, and then there's the Kola de Lo Yishtam. And push it even Begashmi, you see people, when they're, I don't want to use negative, but negative you see it more, that they're so shocked about something they can't even cry. They can't even express themselves because it's so deep that mamish there's no keli for it altogether. Weil in Atzmus kann mechaber sein bei den Sachen zusammen. Sof kol sof, the kavana is that the kelis all sevel sein. Der Rebbe sagt Eres merubim and Keli merubim. Aber das ist nur lost love. Heint ist nicht das. Yeah. Der Rebbe hat sich in Pasha Vayigash, in Tereer steht, Kel Chosen ve Kel Kala. Dafar sein Kel Kala Ech. Okay, so the point of all this is that you see this paradox, that the higher the Gilui, the less Siyud it has. So this is one of the basis of when we explain that if you want to really be mamshech, big hamshacha, all the four reasons I gave before from the Mefarshim, obviously they're all legitimate reasons. But the ultimate, why dafke in Hepech Dikaisius, is because there you have the deepest chsadim. So then how do you reconcile that with the Pshuta Shamikra? What do you mean? Im b'chukei telechu, so here's the schar, and if not, Rachmana litzlan, here's the so-called the curses. You know, what I said now, the curses are also brachas. Like Rashbi said, they're all brachas. So the answer is, why does the Eibishter have a reason, Chaz v'sholem, to curse or to in any way punish someone? So the Shalah speaks about schar v'einish, and most people translate schar v'einish, reward and punishment. And we immediately think, it's like, when you're in school, you don't behave properly, they give you a punishment. So the Eibishter is la derech zeh. But let's be honest, the Eibishter created the human being. He created us with the Yetzer Hara, a Se'er Shebe'isa. He challenges us. He put the Adam Achav in Gan Eden and tells them, don't eat from Eitz Hadas. Basically sets it all up. Not getting now even into Neira Alila al Bnei Adam concept. And then the Eibishter knows we're going to, a Yetzer Hara is going to affect us. And then what? And then he has a pleasure to punish us when we do something wrong. Obviously we have to be accountable and we have to be responsible. That's not the shaila here. But I can't say it's like a principal in a school that's punishing you as a deterrent. So this is where the Alter Rebbe, brings in the different sichos, the different reasons when you say Yisurim Ba'ava, Kalbi Yisurim Ba'ava, the different reasons. So one of them is Chsadim Nistarim, because we understand that it's not that way, it's the exact opposite. Like he says in Ageres HaKedesh, Rachat says B'nai, when let's say a child falls and gets a splinter in their finger, and the parent goes, because they love the child so much, they have to cut out the splinter. If the parent didn't care, then the splinter would be there, and the child wouldn't be maybe in further pain from cutting it out. But the splinter would be there, and the pain would be bigger if you didn't do anything about it. Or you see somebody, God forbid, in surgery, and you say, 1 second, you're shedding blood, how can you cutting somebody open? But if you know the whole story, you know that the surgery is to save the person, not the opposite. So actually love sometimes dictates that the only way to save the person, the only way to help them, is to do something that may look painful for the moment. But it's not coming for that reason. When you look at Torah mitzvahs, estam laws, You could say, so you'd say a person broke the law. What do you want from him? Have rachmanas and gave item. But if you look at mitzvahs, like from the word tzavsa v'chibur, that a mitzvah connects you to Hashem. It connects you to your purpose. When a person doesn't do a mitzvah, or chaz v'shalom doesn't have it, you're damaging yourself. Don't. This is what the Shalah says. Aschar v'einish is siba mesubav. Would anyone say, for example, if you put your hand in fire, the fire is punishing you by burning you? You'd never say that. On the contrary, the fire is warning you, don't touch me because you're going to get burnt. When you feel physical pain, we all don't like pain. And people take painkillers to avoid pain. But what is pain at the end of the day? It's actually a gift. It's a gift, a warning signal that you should do something. If chaz v'sholem, a nerve is severed, or we don't feel pain, if you not feel the pain when you bite your tongue, chaz v'sholem, what could happen? You could end up hurting yourself very deeply. So nobody likes pain. But nobody who understands what pain is will say pain is a bad thing. Pain is a warning. It's like telling you the burglar alarm goes, or the red light is on, go do something. So before the problem gets too big, go do something about it. Now, obviously there are short-term pains, like things you could take, a painkiller, an aspirin, an Advil, or whatever it may be. But something deeper needs to be addressed. So the Eibishter is saying, I'm giving you a blueprint called the Torah. This is a blueprint for life. Chayenu ve'erech yameinu. Friedrich Rebbe has a beautiful mashal in one of the Maimorim, I think in Sadik Ches, if I recall correctly. It's a rare mashal, you don't see it in other Maimorim, where divers who go underwater, there's two types of divers. There's scuba divers, they go with like a oxygen pack on their back, and there are divers that go with a pipe connected to the ship below, and they can walk on the bed of a water or whatever body of water. And they're connected by a pipe that goes all the way up. That's an oxygen pipe. It's not a tank on their back where they swim. They walk on the ground. You see this in... So the Friedrich Rebbe brings this mashal. He says, what would happen to the diver if chaz v'sholem, this pipe was severed? So it's life and death. So the Friedrich Rebbe brings this as a mashal that mitzvahs are like these chutim, like these wires, if you wish, and that we have taryag. So thank God it's not just one. And every time, God forbid, if somebody is ever an Aveda or doesn't do a mitzvah, one of these oxygen lines gets blocked. So that's how Torah mitzvahs is not just a matter of the Eibishter wants us to do mitzvahs. It's the best way you can live your life. So if you know that living a life a certain way is the best thing for you, for your children, for your family, and then you see your child putting their hand in fire or about to cross the street, and you yell at them or you schlep them, or sometimes you have to deter them by showing them, disciplining them, that discipline is coming from profound love. The more you love them, the more you want to protect them. The Zohar says about kashrus, asks a question, if kashrus is so important for the health of a person, why are goyim not responsible to be kosher? If kosher food is, today a lot of goyim like kosher because they think it's, healthier. Little do they know. But, kosher food doesn't mean it's always healthier. But officially, as the Eirachaim, as the Mefarshim say, Ramban, that when you eat, the animals that are treif are generally predators, aggressive animals, and we assume what we consume. You are what you eat, so to speak. So they say tchunas of the chaya become part of you. So that's why the animals that are kosher, which is always in the world of animals, not semeach or daimon, are the ones that are more docile, more domestic, and so on. That's b'derech klal. Those are the simonim, afreses parsa, and alligator. But so the Zohar asks, so why isn't everybody mechuyev in kashrus? And the Zohar says, because the interesting answer that the human race is like different parts of the body. The Klal Yisrael, Am Yisrael is like the lev haguf. The other Umas Elam are different parts of the body. The lev is the most sensitive part, and that's why what enters the lev has to be the purest, because the lev is very, very sensitive. The more sensitive it is, like for example, the blood has to go through a lot of cleansing. If it's, God forbid, gets polluted. So if it's polluted, and let's say you bleed a little on your finger, no. But if it gets polluted there, it can cause a lot of damage. So the more edel something is, the more care has to be taken. It's similar to the concept why Gufei Umas Elam are not Metame and Gufei Yisrael are Metame. Wherever there's a lot of Kedusha, there's also a collection of possible, a lot of Tumah, the Hepech. So going back to our theme here, What the point is that when you look at Torah mitzvahs, that it's not just laws and mitzvahs as in commandments, but connections. And aveda from the word havara mereshus l'reshus. To use more, if you want, modern psychological terms, that a mitzvah is aligning yourself to the purpose of life. And aveda is displacement or dissonance, disconnects you. So then, when it says in the Torah schar ha'nein, it's not talking about some reward, like ba'efen zguli, that you happen to do a mitzvah, I'll give you a candy. You do a mitzvah, I'll give you elam haba. No, it's schar mitzvah, as the Alter Rebbe says. The mitzvah itself is the schar, because by doing it, you become a healthier person. A person gives tzedakah. So b'chlal they say, tzedakah seems like the right thing to do. The Eibishter blessed you, so you share with someone else. But there's another deeper meaning. Tzedakah is good for you too, because you have chesed shebenefesh, and just like you have to exercise your muscles, you have to also exercise the spiritual muscles. And one of them is called chesed. So when you do chesed, you're actually feeding and nourishing the chesed shebenefesh. Same thing with gvura, same thing with tiferes. So in other words, when you think of it from then, this is what Chassidus explains, then the whole Torah mitzvahs becomes really the best way you can be the best possible person, the healthiest person, begashmis and beruchnis. It's one of the themes that, I don't know how much, it's not so emphasized, but I want to just drive the point home. The Rebbe is very strong on this. Well, like for example, you don't see by the other Rabbeim the answer, b'dikas tefillin mezuzahs. I mean, you may find it, I don't think I've ever seen it from the other Rabbeim, maybe once or twice. But the Rebbe, how many times does he say b'dikas tefillin mezuzahs? About what? Gashmis dika things. Something's not going right, so you should look at tefillin mezuzahs. And so some people are in your zguli? No, because the Rebbe was showing us that Torah mitzvahs is not some disconnected thing. That even if you have to go to a doctor, because the Eibishter wants, you have to make a keli. But you have to always know that it's really Torah mitzvahs, the ruchnius, that makes a person healthier. And by the Rebbe, a more ruchnistic person is a more healthier person, begashmis too. I say the Rebbe explaining Torah and Chassidus this way. So when you think of it that way, the Parashat B'chakesai is telling us two things. Here's what the things are, when you do a mitzvah, here are the benefits that you'll have, and if you don't, chaz v'shalom, it's not a punishment, it's cause and effect, siba mesubav. You'll evolve siba mesubav. Cause and effect, it's like putting your hand in fire. The Eibishter is actually blessing us by telling us, here are the consequences. If you eat the wrong, for example, if a doctor told you, you eat these wrong foods, it's going to poison you. You're going to say that's a curse? No, it's actually a blessing. It says in the pasuk, Re'eh anechi nesen lefnechem es hayem es habracha, and then it says the opposite. So the question is asked, nesen kol nesen b'ayin yofer nesen. So nesen lefnechem should be a matana. So the matana bracha versteht. What's the matana nesen hepach bracha? So the Rebbe explains, because when you're traveling down a path and you don't know which way to go, to the right and to the left, and the one way is for sure sakona, and the other way is for sure the right, but you don't know which one. So if someone tells you which way not to go, it's just as much a bracha than if they tell you what path to go on. Many times we know what path to go on, but we don't know how to be careful from a different path. So both are brachas when you see it that way. So going back now to the initial question of brachas and Tochacha, what the Alter Rebbe is saying, look at the Torah, and what explains the story with Rashbi and Rabbi Lazar, is that dafka, the biggest brachas are melubish and aces that are opposite. The Rebbe added one more point that's a very interesting point. He said that it could be that the Talmidei Chacham saw in the future that Rabbi Lazar would have to go through challenges in life. So they could have given him brachas, and that's that. But they wanted him to also know how to have the strength to deal with these challenges. So therefore, they were malbish their brachas and asis that would also address those challenges. So now he had the koyach to, it's like someone says to you, this is going to happen to you, but if you really interpret it right, you can turn it into a challenge, into an opportunity. It's essentially what the Rebbe said. So therefore, that also comes to add a whole other dimension why they have to put it in those asis. You could say it's maybe we were thinking then by Chazara, maybe the Rebbe was being betavach with the last of the Nigladike explanations, that the Mekatrigim should think that the negative things are said. But regardless, the point being, so I'll share a story or two that captures that. I remember my father ended up in the hospital, then. It was Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur Tavshinun. And he had a stroke, a mini stroke. And at Yom Kippur, I was called by the secretary, Rabbi Groner, that Rebbe, I should come down, the Rebbe wants to see me. The Rebbe was not giving out lekach then, he only gave to a few yechidim, but he gave me 2 pieces of honey cake, and said to me, this is for your father. And then he said, with a smile, the Rebbe said, Zogem, as b'shas et endiken sein Schlichus, wird mit dem geschickt, that man von dort nach Reis losen. That's what the Rebbe said. When he finishes the Schlichus where he was sent, which was the hospital, he'll be released. So my father was then in NYU, and I was at Yom Kippur. I went right over to the hospital with the cake. I told my father exactly what the Rebbe said. My mother started running around doing miftzayim. My father called her back and said, "It's my shlichus. You're just visiting me here. I'm the one stuck here." And my father did what he did. He spoke to the doctor. I'm not sure exactly what he did. But the bottom line is, to just continue, Rabbi Chadakov, after Yom Kippur, the day after Yom Kippur, came to visit my father. And he said that, and he was already not so young, Rabbi Chadakov, but he came. He said the Rebbe said to him to ask my father whether he finished his shlichus yet. In other words, it wasn't just a nice line that Rebbe told me, the Rebbe really was serious about. And, my father was released a little while later, so obviously he finished his shlichus. What do you read in this story? It's an amazing story, if you think about it. Most people who goes to a hospital, you don't go to a hospital for shlichus unless you're going on mitzvayim. If you end up in a hospital, it's because you don't want to be there, because of a health situation, or the doctor says you must go, an emergency, whatever it is. And here the Rebbe looks at it, no. The Eibishter needed you to be there. He couldn't get you any other way to the hospital, so he created, God forbid, a situation where you have to end up being there. Similar story, not similar, but al derech zeh. In Tavshin Lamed Tes, there was a midwinter Neshei B'nai Chabad convention in Detroit. Okay, so the women went, it was the middle of the week, and they were coming back for Shabbos. Thursday is a big snowstorm in Detroit, or New York, I'm not sure where it was. And their plane was grounded, they couldn't fly. So they wrote, Mrs. Miriam Sverdlov wrote a letter to the Rebbe, asking for a bracha. We're stuck in the airport in Detroit, and we'd like to come home to our husbands and families for Shabbos, and we're asking for a bracha. So the Rebbe wrote back a whole answer. I'll say it from memory. This is more or less the teich. He circled the word stuck, and he wrote, Hari bavadi, you do it, for sure you know, and I'm sure you even said this in your drashas during the convention, the concept of hashgacha pratis. That everything is by the Eibishter. And it's surprising to me that you're missing and applying this very lesson to yourselves. You say it to other people, what about you? And what better thing than sheleg min hashamayim? That's a simon min hashamayim. Sheleg comes from heaven, so you're getting a message from heaven that you did not finish your shlichus there yet. So the Eibishter wants you to stay longer. So you continue working in the airport, or maybe going back from the way to the airport, or back in the city, and when you'll finish your shlichus there, then you'll be able to come back. That was more or less the teichen of the answer. And that's what taka happened. They stayed, I think they came back after Sunday, or whatever it may be. So here you see, of course, our Rebbe sees with eyes that we don't always see. By us, the snow is just a nuisance. Can't travel. That everything, at the end of the day, has a deeper bracha in it. Why the Eibishter has to be malbush in that? As I said before, it could be the chsadim, the stadim, could be also because we have to go through something that's a challenge, and that's a way of being the tikkun of the challenge. The Rebbe writes in many letters, but one just comes to mind. It's a very sharp letter, it's a very powerful letter, I should say. it's unfortunately deals with one of the challenges of our time. Someone who considers themselves gay writes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe has a 3-page letter in English. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's around. And the Rebbe responds to him that even if the Eibishter created you with certain tendencies and a natural inclination, you still have bchira. And why would the Eibishter put such challenges in front of you? Because he wanted to bring out deeper keiches from you, and the only way to bring those keiches out is to give you this challenge. It's a very, I think, quite a revolutionary approach. It's not just Einim Mavakesh Lefi Keicha, that he gave you a challenge in this area. The Rebbe doesn't say it's not a challenge. The Rebbe doesn't even say it's not the natural inclination. The Torah obviously asks it, so it means you have choice. But why give someone such an assignment? Because the nisayon itself is meant to draw out from you those deeper keiches. So this is a common theme. They assign many, many letters and answers from the Rebbe. This is not justifying, I want to make it clear, this is not justifying tragedies, holocausts, deaths, and so on. We don't answer those questions. That shtei kachol of machshava, we don't understand, because God could have done it a different way. We're talking about after the fact. Once it's happened, so this is not like saying, oh, now it's something bad, to point fingers and say, because you did an Aveda, now you're going to be cursed. That's not, that's not how we speak, and that's not the apiteta. It's saying once it happens, we have to understand it as consequences, as cause and effect, and look inside our hearts, and definitely not accuse anybody. This is not a license to blame people for their Avedas. Rambam says in Hilchos Tainis in the beginning, he says when a tragedy or catastrophe happens, he says that it's a time, it's not to say mikra nikris, would be achzarius. Everybody yifashbers b'maisav. So people misinterpret. They think, when something negative happens, let's find the culprit and point fingers and say, who's at fault? The Rambam is saying, you have to look in your heart and soul. Since you saw it happen, what's the lesson for you? It doesn't say go start finding a person to blame. That's not a Torah approach. So the point being is that, going back to the Etzem Minyan, when you look at it that way, there are really no curses. They're really brachas. That doesn't mean they're not negative. It doesn't mean that it may take on negative form. And we dafka pray, there should be teva nira v'nigla. We don't ask the Eibishter for chsadim nistarim. We wanted begoli. We want the nista to come out begoli. But the fact of the matter is, we have to also understand life has times when things are behelim and things are in kalim that we cannot see begoli, the bracha, and that's the deepest brachas of all. Now people ask about Gimel Tammuz. Okay. I once gave a talk about this topic, and someone said, what about Gimel Tammuz? Is that a bracha or a klola? I don't know if I'd use any of those words. To me, it's more of a mystery than anything. But the fact of the matter is, obviously nobody wanted Gimel Tammuz. Nobody expected it. It's not something we celebrate exactly. However, after the fact, what would the Rebbe tell us? Tell us the same thing. What happened? Yud Shvat Tavshin Yud. What does the Rebbe say at the end of the Maimer Bas Lagani Tavshin Yud Aleph? We didn't ask for this. We didn't want this. Who needed this talkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe? The Rebbe says, Mama's those aces. Aber, this is what was given to us. In other words, there's a certain element that you don't have control certain things. We don't control what happened on Gimel Tammuz. That was the Eibishter's Ratzon, which may remain a mystery forever. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll understand. So we can look at it, just sit now and lament and cry, Oy, Gimel Tammuz, 30 years. Or we could say, maybe that gives us even more keiches to bring out our Aveda, like the Rebbe said, Tut Alzvasid Kent. And unfortunately, it was fulfilled in the way that we didn't like, where the Rebbe's Begashmi is not with us. But he still said Tut Alzvasid Kent, and 11 months later had a stroke from Chav Ches Nisan to Chav Zayin Adar. And then came Gimel Tammuz 2 years and some months later. So a chassid who understands the Rebbe's approach says it's taka difficult, but you have to, like a soldier in an army, you can't resign yourself, you can't surrender, you can't quit. You pick yourself up and you say, this time, that means we have to do even more to bring the Rebbe's message and the Rebbe's presence and the Rebbe's keiches to people. Of course it would be easier if the Rebbe was doing it all, and Fabrein Shabbos, and leading Simchas Torah and Akofis and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and the whole year round. But as the Rebbe says, sometimes you need to have Aveda B'Kayach Atzmei. the famous Sikha of Bikishakav Legalis Saketz, the Rebbe says the biggest Aved is that you don't have any Begili, any Keiches Momaila, and that makes you Shaim Rabba Mem Dalet. What the Rebbe say? There's no reason for goals. The only reason, with tears, the Rebbe is saying this. Mamish B'chias. The Rebbe is saying the only reason, Efsher, if there was any reason, a mile in Golas, you'd see there's a mile in it. So I'm not saying that is Gimel Tam, but it's the same idea. So in the so-called Klola, in the negative, in the Helam is a tremendous Gili. Just like the Magid's, the same Sikha that Rebbe, Tu B'Shvat Lametes. We all know the Sikha there as well. One of those very strong Sikhas. The Tate B'Halzach, the Magid's Moshel. The father hides from his child in order to elicit the ingenuity of the child to find the father. That's the kavanah of the Helam. Tzimtzum b'shvil hagili. But the father hid himself so well that the child can't find the father. How does the Rebbe say that? Zunte gesucht, monte gesucht, dinste gesucht. Was will man from dem Kind? What do you want from the child? The Eibishter hid himself so well. So the child gives up. So the Helam is not a klola, the Helam is a bracha, b'chsadim nistarim. It's in the tzura of a Helam, but the goal is to bring out even deeper keiches. But if it's misunderstood, or it's misused, then it could turn into a Helam she'ein kamayu, a chesher kafel mechupel, and all the negative things that come from that. So even the Helam, the Chassidus explains, Helam is b'shvil hagili, there's no such thing. It says tzimtzum is heipach harotzen. That's what it says. Tzimtzum addition. The Eibishter made the tzimtzum. It's heipach harotzen. Because the rotzen is not the tzimtzum. The rotzen is the goli. It's tzimtzum b'shvil hagili. So basically, when you look at then for every Helam, including the klal, the Tochacha, it's really end up being really deeper brachas. However, we pray at the same time, as I said, that it should be begoli. It shouldn't remain there. The Helam is, at the end of the day, the child should look for his father and find him, and it should come out b'tei v'nira v'nigo. That's why the Asad Lavei is not just tam nachas ruach nivra. The Eibishter gives us Mashiach. It's also for the Eibishter, like the Rebbe explains in the famous Vayigash Sich in Chelik Hey, that the Giluyim is negei in Atzmus. That even Atzmus needs to be begoli, kavyochel. Because it's not shleimus Atzmus when it's not begoli, if it remains behelam. Which explains why Geula Mashiach is not just for us, it's also for the Eibishter, so to speak. That Gili is, but Gili ha'etzem. Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyaslei is Baruch Dira b'Tachtenim. He wants it in Tachtenim. Tachtenim is mamish the hepech of Giluyim. What does the Alter Rebbe say in Perek Lamed Vav? Tachtenim b'Gili Ein Sof. That Helam Acher Helam Tachten Shein Tachten Lamatim Imenu. And to the extent that it's Chesher Kafel Mechupel, Moli Klippers V'Sitra Achre, and Hashem Gevrim Bey, the point that Aniva Afsied, all this is essentially klolus. And Kol Yem, as the Gemara in Seita says, can be worse than the day before. But the kavanah of Tachtenim should be in there, should be Dafka Dira La'atzmusa is Dafka in Tachtenim. Yesh HaNivra is Dafka the place where the Yesh HaMiti gets revealed. Not in the Eris and Giluyim Lamayla. So you have here the central theme of how to look at even negative experiences, including the Tochacha and so on, in a positive way. Which, of course, conclude with the powerful story. The Alter Rebbe used to read the Torah every week. One week he wasn't there, Pasha Kisove, the Mittler Rebbe, middle of Kriyas HaTorah, they reached the Tochacha, and he's hearing the Psukim, he faints. Scholar says he faints. They revive him, they say, what do you faint? He said, you hear what we just read? They said, but you read it every year in the Tochacha. What's mitamol now? He said, when the Tata learned, Herruchnar Brachas. What does it mean? What does that mean? His father, the Alter Rebbe, when he read the Torah, the Psukim were different. No, obviously not. Because the Alter Rebbe read it in a way that he could see, like the Rashbi, interpreting the same Psukim that most of us would read, but Chitzenius can sound so negative. He read it, I guess, in a tune, or those that were Margish felt that it was brachas. And it's after the Rebbe brings Avinu, my Tata, Avinu Avarachaman. He's Megala, even in the darkness, he Megala the Pnimius. So what it means practically for us, first of all, the Eibishter should protect everybody from all challenges and from all difficulties, especially now in Eretz Yisrael and everywhere. But if, God forbid, something happens that doesn't seem positive, we have Chassidus teaches us how to look at it. And not just philosophically, also practically, how to find deeper keiches. That's the end of the thing. I always tell people with difficult situations, I say, I don't know if you're looking for answers, you're looking for strength. That's what you're looking for. Answers is very hard. The Rebbe says many times, we don't have an answer why bad things happen to good people. There's no answer for that. But what to do about it, and that you have the strength to do something about it, absolutely. So the Rebbe should bless everyone, especially again in Eretz Yisrael, protect the end to the war, freedom of the hostages, and Eden everywhere should be healthy and gesund, b'teva nira v'nigla. We should march to the Geula as we go into Matan Torah the next few weeks.